Good morning, everyone. My name is Kisa Mwangonde from the University of Namibia. My fellow authors, Maria Tinda and Victoria Hashila Mufeti, are also from the University of Namibia. We are all under the School of Computing, Maria and I specifically under the Computer Science Department, while Victoria is under the Information Technology Department. Today, I'll be presenting on a game-based approach to revive cultural heritage amongst the youth. I'll start by giving the motivation of the study, followed by the objectives of the study. From there, I'll explain the methodology that was used in the study, and then I'll present the results that were found in the study, followed by the business benefits, and finally, I will then conclude the presentation. Culture is a very important factor in many communities for a number of reasons. One of the main reasons is because of its contribution to the tourism industry. The tourism industry is a very important industry in many African countries because of its contribution to the economic growth of a country. Amongst these countries is Namibia, which was the case study for this research. UNESCO's Sustainable Development Goals actually recognize culture as an enabler for economic, social, and environmental aspects of sustainable growth. In addition to this, culture is also very important because it is the unforeseen force that brings people together, and it also helps people understand where they come from. Due to urbanization, which is the move of people from rural areas to townships, the practice of cultural rituals in African communities has greatly deteriorated. Amongst these African communities is the Ovambu tribe of Namibia, which is also the case study, which was also the tribe that was studied in this research. Due to urbanization, many of the younger generation of Vambus is not as well versed in cultural traditions as the older generation once was. And as a result, cultural traditions are slowly but surely fading away from the community. These days, many of the youth's attention is on mobile games, as well as just their mobile phones in general. Therefore, because the youth is the future of any tribe, a mobile game entitled Ovambu Master was developed in order to teach the Ovambu youth more about their cultural rituals. And because of this, and a concept known as game-based learning was what was used in order to teach the Ovambu youth more about their cultural rituals. Game-based learning can be defined as a method used to teach people or convey information using a game as a medium. I'll move on to the objectives of the study. The main objective of the study was to develop a mobile application for Android-enabled devices to increase the cultural knowledge of its users. The sub-objective was to identify the rituals that the Ovambu youth were interested in learning in, and then for those rituals to be incorporated in the game. The second sub-objective was to determine the user's knowledge prior and post playing the game. The first sub-objective was done through the means of a questionnaire. 22 Ovambu University of Namibia students were asked what cultural ritual they would like to learn about, and the majority chose that they would like to learn more about their cultural rituals. And from there, after the game was developed, the users were given a questionnaire before playing the game and after playing the game to see if they determine whether they had learned something from the game. The research methodology, as I mentioned earlier, we had 22 participants at the beginning of the study using random sampling technique, where students were asked what they would like to learn about, what more would they like to learn about their culture, and where they chose cultural rituals. And then we also had another questionnaire, which is also mentioned earlier in the objectives, which was after the game was developed, where 12 UNAM final year information technology students were sampled using convenience sampling for the pre and post game questionnaire to find out whether they had learned something after playing the game. As for the methodology that was used to develop the game, it is known as game development life cycle, where the first phase is to design the game. This is where you design how the game is going to look like, the different things that you want the game to do, the different functionalities that are going to be included in the game. From the design phase, there is the develop and then the redevelop phase. This is where the different tools were chosen of what was going to be used to develop the game. In this case, we chose Android Studio and SQLite, which is an inbuilt database that is already in Android Studio. From developing the game, you evaluate. And as you can see, the evaluate stage has a type of a loop that you can go back to the develop stage if things are not found to be function as they should be in the evaluation stage. Therefore, in the evaluation stage, it's a stage where you just check to go through to see if the game is functioning as it should be. And if it's not, you go back to the develop stage and so forth. From there, you move on to the testing phase, which means that the game has now passed the evaluate stage and you're now satisfied with how the game is, of the things that you've included in the game. Therefore, you test it to outside users to see if they're able to use it, its usability, and if they see anything that they have comments on or maybe adding to the game. From there, there's a review release where you also release it once again, and this is to the people who are actually going to be playing the game, which in this case was the Ovambo students. And if you find that maybe it's not answering the objective, then you can go way back to the design phase and start to design again if it's missing out anything. From there, you finally have the release stage where the game is now complete. It has undergone all the phases and everyone is now satisfied with how the game is functioning. I will now move on to the major outcomes and results. Here I have a graph that just shows the results of the pre and post-game questionnaire. The two results are being compared in this graph. So the pre-game questionnaire is represented by the blue line. As we can see, those are the scores of the 12 different students. The pre-game results are showing the results that the students obtained the first time when they played the game. For example, student number 1 got a 60% before playing the game. But after playing the game, the same student number 1, as we can see in the post-game results, which is represented by the orange line, that student now got 100%, which means that their knowledge of those cultural rituals had increased after playing the game, which was the main objective of the study. From there, we move on to the business benefits. The business benefits are that culture, as already mentioned earlier, greatly contributes to the economic growth of many African countries. And because of this, many African countries can actually gain business through being well versed in their cultural rituals. And this game helps people just to do that, to get to know their cultural rituals better and be able to attract tourists to come to their countries. And because tourism is a major source of income in African countries, the more versed people in that country, in their culture, the more income comes into that country. And as we already saw earlier from the results, this game helps people increase their knowledge. Therefore, this game can be used as a way to help people know more about their cultural rituals or their cultural traditions, and as a result, can increase tourism in their country. The picture in this slide is just a picture of how the game looked that was developed. As I already mentioned earlier, it is called Ovambo Master Quiz Game. And there you can see you have a quiz where you can start quiz, and then they're quizzed on a number of questions with a timer, timing them on how long it takes them to answer the question. And you can also click on the icons that you see below there, where there's a puzzle, there's a little traditional doll dressed in the traditional outfit of the Ovambo tribe, and an eye, which just gives the information about the game. When you click on the puzzle, that's where it takes you to the match game, where it has different cultural items that belong to the Ovambo tribe. To conclude, the preservation of culture is very important, as I mentioned earlier, because of its contribution to the tourism industry in many African nations and how that contributes to their economic growth. And aside from this, we know that it brings people together, and it also helps people understand where they come from. In this study, a game was developed in order to help preserve culture so that people would know more about their cultural traditions through the use of the game, which was based on a concept known as game-based learning. From this study, we saw that it's possible for people to learn more about their culture through the means of a game. And further research can maybe be done on using a game for also teaching other things, using this same concept of game-based learning For example, we suggested that maybe people can look more into using a game to actually teach different languages to people as well. We also suggested that for future studies, people can look into the use of augmented reality to preserve culture. These are the references that were used in this presentation. Thank you very much for your time and for your attention.